else remembers 2014? Because if you don't, you're probably too young to be here anyway, and you should leave. In 2014, the weird mustache trend was finally going away, 7th edition Warhammer had just been released, and all the YouTubers on YouTube were doing these videos called Draw My Life. And I kind of want to do a Draw My Life video in 2023, right now, except instead of Draw My Life, I want to do more of a Paint My Life. I want to tell you about my creative journey, both before and during my time at Games Workshop, and also how, against all odds, I ended up here on YouTube with my own hobby channel. Whilst I do that, I also want to paint this little lady. This little lady. This is Presentor, and she was lovingly crafted and gifted to me by Trent over on the hobby YouTube channel Miscast, and if you don't follow him already, I really recommend you do. He's a really great guy and his hobby videos are just fantastic. And Presentor kind of means a lot to me as a miniature, so I think that she'll be absolutely perfect for this video. Also, she was really good fun to paint. This is gonna be a bit of a story time, so make sure you get settled and you get comfy with a drink like a hot chocolate or a tea, or if you're already somewhere warm, then something iced and cool to keep you nice and cold. And without further ado, hi, I'm Louise, and this is the story of my hobby channel, Rogue Hobbies. So in order to start our story, we need to get in the way back when machine and boop boop back in time to when I was a kid. Because the truth is that I've always been the weird little goblin arty child. I used to cover the walls of my childhood bedroom with God knows how many hand-drawn, scrawled images of whatever weird little niche thing I was into at the time. Lord of the Rings was massive at the time to me. Bionicle, I think, changed my life and set me up to be the person I am today, and I think I even had a phase where I was like drawing different kinds of Furbies for like a week straight obsessively. Like I would do like a mechanical Furby and a monster Furby and a princess Furby, and I think my parents must have been really weirded out by this because it is a bit weird, so sorry guys. And I know nowadays in 2023 cringe culture is dead and we can be really grateful and go onto the streets and all be really weird and cringe, but unfortunately for me, during the 90s and the early 2000s when I was in school, it certainly was not dead, and I was very, very much part of that culture. Either way, what was important to me developmentally, maybe a bit more than running around pretending to be Legolas in primary school, is that I knew that all I wanted to do when I was older was to draw and to paint and create. As far as Warhammer goes, I was introduced to it at a very young age, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, I don't know, that kind of age, because my childhood friend was into it and his parents were friends with my parents, and I would go around to his house and he would have all the Space Marines on the shelves and the tanks on the polystyrene terrain board, and I just thought it was like the coolest thing in the world. I was, however, never encouraged to engage with Warhammer by my parents, probably because I didn't tug on their sleeves and go, "Hey mum, what's a Space Marine?" or "Hey dad, give us a tank." And there also wasn't a Warhammer club in my school growing up either, although recently I was contacted by a parent of a kid at the school currently, and apparently now there is a Warhammer club, which makes my inner child very happy, and I'm super grateful that they reached out, so if they're watching, hi Warhammer club. But for many years, whilst I thought Lord of the Rings was the best thing ever, Space Marines looked super cool, and polystyrene terrain tables smelled oddly alluring, it would be at least 10 years until I painted my own first miniatures. So eventually I grew up and predictably ended up going to art school up in sunny Aberdeen, and during that time I was given a box of old Warhammer miniatures by some friends who were also interested in Warhammer. And for that moment and that kind of weird little point in time, I am eternally grateful. They gave me a box of 40k orcs, and whilst they rightfully encouraged me to go out and discover which army I truly wanted to paint, that summer I absolutely fell in love with those goofy little orcs. I did, however, do my due diligence and paint up a few other minis, and one of the first ones I actually painted was the Mask of Slaanesh, and I wish I still had that mini to show you guys one of the first paint jobs I ever did. I'll see if I can find a picture of it, but it currently lives at my friend's house, and I'm kind of glad she does, because she's probably quite happy there. He has quite a big Slaanesh army, so it works out. But once summer was over, I took my orcs back to uni and kind of just did what I usually did at uni and kept myself to myself. I would sit in my room every night and paint up my orcs pretty obsessively, and I'd only really venture out to anonymous internet forums to talk about the hobby and my painting progress in general. Warhammer as an online-based hobby was pretty small back then, and things like Duncan's painting videos were still a few years off existing, but I was really content at this point. I just wanted to paint my miniatures quietly in my room, not really go out, and I didn't really want for much else. Except when I needed emergency hobby supplies. At the beginning of my Warhammer journey, I was kinda scared to go into my local games workshop, not because I'm a girl or anything like that, but because I was just a little bit scared of doing anything and everything. I would usually buy all my hobby products online so they would get shipped directly to my room at uni, but occasionally you run out of primer and you just can't wait a week, so I would end up scuttling into my local games workshop, buying a little can of Chaos Black, and then scuttling back out pretty swiftly. But one day, they got me hooked, they gave me a flyer and talked to me a little bit, and the upcoming event was Armies on Parade. And well, I had a whole army of Savage Orcs, and I was super keen at this point to experiment with making a display board, because I've never done anything like that, so I thought, why not? I spent the next month making a very rudimentary board for my Snakebite Orcs, and then I entered it into the Armies on Parade competition in the store. And I ended up winning gold, which kind of meant I had to talk to people who apparently wanted to play games and talk to me about Warhammer and this thing which I loved doing. And it turns out that whilst I was scared at the beginning, I was also very much welcomed in by the local community. I'm so grateful for that, and I'm so grateful that I ended up doing it in the end, because I made some incredible friends who I still look forward to seeing today, and I ended up painting some of my favourite miniatures I've ever painted during this time. That is until my time at uni finished and I needed to get a job. After my time at uni was up, I spent about a year working in a toy shop, and I really enjoyed that time as well because I quite like toys and kids shows and cartoons, so I was sort of super into that, but I was also applying, obviously, for graphic design and illustrator jobs up in Scotland. And there weren't that many going around. The oil crash had just happened and a lot of graphic designers were either out of a job or soaking up all the other jobs in Scotland because they were way more qualified than me. I would kind of check in on jobs on the Games Workshop page, kind of in the same way that people like to go on property websites and look up houses which are way out of their budget. It's sort of fun in like a torturous way, and you can kind of be like, oh, what if I did apply? Haha, no, that'll never happen. Well, one day I saw Games Workshop advertising a job that I thought I could probably actually do, which was a book layout sort of designer role in what was then Forge World and what is now the Specialist Design Studio. And I thought, why not just apply for fun? If I got an interview, then it was a great excuse to do something I'd never done before and go to Warhammer World. So I applied for the job and I got the call saying they wanted to interview me, and I panicked for about a week and I packed my little weekend bag and I headed off to Nottingham for my interview with a portfolio stuffed full of goblin illustrations and pictures of my Warhammer miniatures. And I think the interview must have gone pretty well, because I was offered the job about 10 minutes after my interview finished. I remember sitting on the balcony in Bugman's after my interview, feeling very nervous, and Mark Bedford came to find me to tell me I got the job, and I'll always remember that because it's quite funny. And I started working at Games Workshop about a week later. And perhaps I was a little bit too excited to be working for Games Workshop, and I think this is something I'd like to talk about in more length in another video. Because whilst I was super happy and so stoked and I considered myself to be in this big privileged dream job, I think this mentality is what caused me to absolutely crash mentally not too long after I started, and I would be suffering from these massive panic attacks, which at the time I didn't even understand what they were. I just thought I was going crazy, sat at my desk, and I didn't know what was happening for a really long time. Fortunately though, after a while, I managed to settle down into my role in Forge World, and I ended up working on some of the best projects and with the best and most talented people that I've ever met. Whilst I was in Forge World, I filled a few different roles, from construction bookmaker and packaging designer, to photographer, miniature painter, book layout person, and finally I finished off my career as an illustrator for a few years. And I was being entrusted to create pretty prestigious projects, like the planet Caliban, and even the map of the Old World, which is now in the very capable hands of Holly Goodwin. But of course my favourite thing to work on was always Blood Bowl, for obvious reasons. And mostly it's because I just got to draw goofy little guys, which, if you know me, is pretty much what I love to do most in life. But especially recently, I think I've become kind of against the idea of feeling privileged or lucky to have a certain job or be paid to do a certain thing. As workers, our labour is important and we're providing a service to the employers and they need us, and this is why we get paid and blah 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 blah. But honestly, when I look back and reflect on my time in Forge World, I really can't help but feel a big pang of gratefulness towards the people I worked with and the people who managed the projects I worked on. This may be the big old imposter syndrome kicking in, but I do not consider myself the best or the most professional illustrator or graphic designer or photographer or anything like that in the world ever. And I feel like they really gave me the opportunity to do my best and test my mettle in fields and outlets that I wasn't super polished in, when they could have absolutely easily found someone way more qualified to do so. I made some fantastic friends and I produced some of the best work that I've ever done for game systems that I personally loved whilst I was there. And in case any of them are watching or listening, which I think that they probably are, hi guys. I just want to say, honestly, I really miss you guys, and I want to thank you all so much for everything you did for me and for giving me some of the most enjoyable years of my life. Despite my rampant imposter syndrome, one thing I do think that I was pretty good at, however, was things like open days and Warhammer Fest. And I kind of want to talk about open days and Warhammer events, as whilst they weren't like a huge part of my job at the time, they were maybe what I loved doing the most. If you guys are new here or have never had the pleasure of going to a Warhammer event, they used to happen around 4 to 5 times a year, and it was the only time that staff got to kind of cut loose and talk to the public. If you were lucky as a staff member, you got to sit in front of a portfolio of your work, and customers would be super excited to find out what it is you'd worked on, and you got to chat to them, and it was generally just like a super good vibe. Now, at the time, I hadn't really done anything prestigious in my job. I'd made a few construction booklets and stuff like that, so my job at open days ranged from directing people where to go to seminars, to sitting at a table with some minis to paint whilst I chat to people about whatever really, and my personal favourite thing to do was the paint and take table, where people would come kind of hang out and try a little bit of painting. I quickly realised that the buzz I got from teaching people how to paint and just kind of interacting with customers out there in the big wide world was, in general, something I could totally see myself pursuing professionally. So I ended up signing up for every single open day, Warhammer Fest, and event that I possibly could. Regulations at Games Workshop when I'm filming this video states that studio staff can no longer work at events, which I think is super sad, and I know a lot of people on both sides of the curtain are gonna miss the experience which we were used to. But fortunately now I'm super looking forward to being a customer again, so I can go to all the events I like, and I can talk to all the people I like, and generally just have the best time ever. But back to the story. I realised that I loved talking to people about Warhammer and painting Warhammer, and it just so happened that at the time I was kind of thinking that a job had come up in marketing and they needed a new painting presenter, so it seemed perfect, right? In 2021, I joined the marketing team at Games Workshop to be a presenter for their shiny new project, Warhammer Plus. And we didn't really know what Warhammer Plus was when I started, but I ended up working with some amazing people with incredible creative vision and talent, and I ended up even designing the sets which you mostly see be today. We were all so stoked and excited for the start of Warhammer Plus, and we were all like, oh, this is gonna be the best thing ever, how can people possibly be mad at this? And although the setup was like super tough and hard work, we all ended up being really proud when the first couple of episodes of what we had made started coming out, and people seemed to really enjoy what we were making, mostly. And I was, of course, at this time extremely nervous with this massive career shift I'd thrown myself into. I don't know if this is like obvious or I've made it clear before or you've just maybe picked up on it, but I have terrible self-confidence issues. And whilst I had no problem with the painting side of the job, the presenting side took a lot of guts for me. I kind of picked up the job as a bit of exposure therapy in a way, and I know that sounds weird, but I kind of thought that if I was there on camera and people could see me, then it would be like, yep, that's what I look like, here I am, deal with it. And I'm not really sure if it helped or if it made it worse, but what I did end up discovering is that no matter how I felt or how I looked, I really loved teaching people how to paint. And for that, I am so grateful for the job for allowing me to discover this, and to my friends like Peachy and Hattie and the YouTube painters and the editing team and the other painters and most of the people that worked there for generally being just really awesome people. Unfortunately, it turns out that a lot of things went wrong along the way. A lot of those things made me sad, and unfortunately they still make me a little bit sad as I'm recording this video now. And I'm sorry if you came to this video thinking it would be the why I left Games Workshop video, and this thing that I'm talking about here doesn't quite scratch that itch. I hope that one day, maybe, I'll be able to talk about it, and when I do, it'll be because I'm in a much better place and I can probably sit with my friends and laugh about it. But until then, I think it's really important to know that there was way more than just the dumb only hands thing happening beneath the surface. But I stayed for a really long time, maybe way longer than I should have, and I think I stuck around for so long because honestly, I just loved Games Workshop. And whilst I know it's not healthy to love a corporation, I certainly loved the people, the community, and being surrounded by fantastic creatives who brought the thing that I loved to life, and I desperately wanted things to work and to be a part of that system. So the realization that the dream job I was in was maybe hurting me was extremely tough to say the least, and it took me a really long time to realize that my love for those things that I just mentioned, like the community, the creatives, the IP, the painting, the goblins, all those things, they would never go away no matter where I was. So I made the leap and decided to make myself happy by kind of just giving myself permission to just be me. Yay, we're back! We're back! Hi! And here we are in the right now, whoosh, it's the future, and Rogue Hobbies is real, it's a channel. If you're watching this, it means I'm on YouTube, which is crazy, and I kind of can't believe it's real. I want this channel and my Patreon, and I guess me as your host, to be kind of a hub for all the things that I love about this wacky little hobby. And sure, I'm super excited to teach you guys how to paint wacky miniatures in bright colors, but most of all, I'm so looking forward to being able to have this platform where I don't have to limit myself in any way. I want to get involved, meet new people, go to new places, paint with different paints, get miniatures which look even weirder than the ones I have right now, and just kind of be the unhinged little goblin human that I was born to be. And if you've come along from the ride, I just want to say I am so grateful. Thank you so much for being here. So I'm currently doing something really stupid, and I'm recording this video the day before I launch Rogue Hobbies, and it's April 6th and I launch on Friday, April 7th. And if you're watching this, it means it's happened, which is great. And this is probably going to be like the second or third video that I launch. So I kind of want this section to be a letter to my future self, and I guess a little message to the future host of Rogue Hobbies. So let's go. Hi Louise, I hope that you're well. I hope that you're being kind to yourself, and I hope that you're happy, and I hope you're trying to take it easy as well, because sometimes you're not kind to yourself and you don't take it easy and things go wrong when that happens, so just do your best. I hope that through this channel you're discovering new ways that you can spread this mad joy that you feel inside of yourself for this crazy little hobby that makes so many people so happy. I hope that you've reconnected with some of the friends who maybe became a little bit distant during the time that you struggled, because you know that they care, and I also hope that you are making so many new friends as well. And most of all, I really hope that you're having fun, because that's why you've worked so hard. That's why we're here on YouTube doing wacky little things, because you just want to have fun and you want people to have fun with you. And with that, thank you so much for being here, thank you for watching, and most of all, thank you for being rogues. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!